Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone's had good lunch. Yes? Can I see a show of hands? Oh, I shouldn't because I haven't had mine. So, so ladies and gentlemen, just give me a few seconds. We'll just wait for a few of our delegates to join in. Well, welcome back to the Economic Times World Leaders Forum 2026. I do hope overall you're having a great time. You had a great day one, and we're wrapping it up in style in a few hours from now. So there's something that we're always hungry for, right? And that is our topic around AI. So that's going to continue, ladies and gentlemen. We will return to AI, but this time we're talking about technology that is already starting to move beyond the familiar prompt and response experience. Our panel is called The Next AI Revolution from Generative Models to Intelligent Systems. Because after all, generative AI has shown us what machines can create. But this next wave is increasingly about systems that can understand context, make decisions, and then act on that intelligence. And we're loving the fact that our panelists who are joining us will be approaching this shift from very different directions, which always makes a panel very interesting and very enriching for the audience as well. They're going to be covering it all from AI infrastructure and physical AI to life sciences and personalized consumer experiences. So, without further ado, it is truly my privilege to welcome to the stage founder and chief executive officer of SEMA.ai, Krishna Rangasayee. Welcome, sir. Welcome back. Co founder and chief, let's keep that applause coming, co founder and chief technology officer of Adaption, Sudip Roy. Co-founder and chief executive officer of Sorcero, Dipanwita Das, and co-founder and chief executive officer of Just AI, Neha Mittal. Moderating this discussion is ET Swati Murthy. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up, please. The fabulous set of people on stage. Welcome, and it's over to you.
Thank you for here. This post-lunch session is always a little challenging, but I am glad we have a full room. And thanks a lot. I think Krishna, Sudeep, Dipanvita, and Neha, they all come from different backgrounds. And I think we are 4 years down from the, almost 4 years down from the GPT moment and from generative models. And now I think we are talking about singularity, agentic AI, super intelligence, and whatnot. So I think I wanted to start with, to kickstart this conversation with, how do you define intelligent systems? Because it has different connotation in different sectors. So in one word, because we have a very long line of questions for all of you. So yeah, how do you define intelligent systems? Maybe we can start with Neha.
Absolutely. We started when we talked about AI in terms of creation, and now intelligent systems, if I have to give one word, that's extreme judgment, right? Judgment of not just saying yes, but sometimes no.
Um, I I would have to agree with Neha on the fact that it's really the word judgment that differentiates intelligence from not, which is also why so much of the AI today is not intelligent by that definition. Judgment also implies accountability, and you can't really hold a model accountable, so you don't know if you want to saddle them with a judgment.
Yeah, I would say I'd probably just quote Einstein, who essentially said like the true sign of intelligence is whether you can actually adapt.
Adapt.
You asked for one word. I think I would pick reasoning.
Reasoning. Fair enough. See, the reason I started with this is there are each of them have very different kind of challenges and how they are adopted. So starting with Krishna, you work at physical AI. I think that is all the rage right now. Everybody can't get enough of robots and I mean the assortment of physical AI. So when you are scaling intelligent at scale at edge, so what do you think is a key bottleneck for you, because you're talking about reasoning, so it has very different kind of challenges. So where are we at, you know intelligence at scale, which is robots or drones or whichever we are talking about, and what is the key bottleneck that you're facing there?
It's a great question. I think I almost see that there's three layers of complexity to deal with. I think the first layer of complexity is high accuracy and reasoning models. So we have gone from notional elements of CNNs and transformers now into reasoning architectures. That's mimicking human capacity for the first time. And I still think we are very, very early in the journey in really building high accuracy reasoning systems. So one is on the AI level, improving the quality of the models and their performance is one barrier. The second one is, from my perspective on physical AI, the AI portion ends up sadly being the easiest portion. It's
Interesting.
really the real world interaction with sensors and networks and human machine interfaces, safety, security constructs really being the second largest challenge. The third one is scaling AI. Mean, creating a proof point or a POC is relatively easy. Scaling AI in production scale systems where you could retrofit or you could take a fleet of cars or a entire industry factory floor automation and really scale them into really a fully deployed and a life cycle maintained cycle through ML operations and such is a really massive task. And that I think are the three barriers to, I think, if you will scale physical AI. No doubts, the whole planet's working on reducing the risk on all three. And I think we're making decent progress.
And the next question, I mean, it's related to what Krishna was talking about, but geopolitics. Sudeep, as a part of adoption and you as a part of SEMA AI in the semiconductor competing with NVIDIA, geopolitics is as much that is shaping AI as every other factor. So I would actually like to understand with the clashes that we are seeing between US and China and how is it actually shaking up those sector for you and what are the key challenges you're facing because you both are at the frontier. So would love to hear more from you. Both of
Yeah,
you.
I would say it's in some ways like a challenge, but in also a big way, it's an opportunity, right? So I think a lot of countries have essentially realized that AI is as fundamental as electricity for them, and they cannot necessarily, not have full control of the stack, right? Starting from chips all the way to the models to the applications. And so there's a lot of, I guess, momentum behind sovereign AI. And in some ways, some of the work that we are doing at Adaption is essentially trying to make sovereign AI possible. Sovereign AI also can have, different degrees. You can own the context layer, you can own the model layer, but it's all about like how much control do you have over your intelligence systems.
Uh, you also have manufacturing because compute and manufacturing are two significant parts that are seeing significant stress and you are operating in both.
Yeah. So I'll be brief, and I think we've spoken a lot about the the ecosystem in China and the ecosystem outside of China. I think the world's getting diversion. I don't see a path where there's going to be a cohesive synergy between China and the rest of the world. And I would say, I mean, I agree that it's both an opportunity and a challenge, right? And I think in my mind, the only way to really move forward is to look at it as an opportunity and look at managing supply chain, managing AI complexity, and global deployment. And it's a very intertwined world. Untangling and figuring out a new roadmap is going to be key for every nation.
And it's impossible not to talk about trust when you talk about AI. And I think you have, Dipanwita, you have background in public health and you have founded Sorcero, which is, works closely in the safety and commercialization with pharma companies. So when it comes to AI, the trust is more important in healthcare than anywhere else. Uh, how, where do you think these autonomous decision stops, AI stops, and human judgment begins? And how are you building that?
It is a great question. It's also one of my favorite topics. Well, I'll give you sort of two aspects of this. So one is by design, we chose to not be patient facing and not be applied in a clinical context. That's because we do not believe fundamentally that a lay person should be deciding how they should treat themselves by the output of an LLM of any sort. And we just don't think it's quite there yet. So, by design, Sorcero serves the subject matter expert within the pharmaceutical enterprise who is both qualified and whose actual job it is to take decisions and to decide what kind of data needs to be shared. That's one part of it. I think the other part of trust is very closely tied with context. So it isn't as simple as saying my model is 99.6% accurate. That doesn't really mean anything. It's about what are you doing with that? What is the task you're doing or you're using the model to power? And whether that has an evaluation framework and whether that evaluation framework is what you're really benchmarking against and seeing whether over and over again, particularly as we move into an agentic world, that one task is it actually maintaining the benchmarks of human decision making?
Interesting, right? And along the same lines, I think trust. So I'm starting with most negative points about AI right now. I think these are the questions that I have, and I'm pretty sure guests have as well. You work in marketing, and your very interesting history, where you have built the personalization platform for notifications on Twitter and then Pinterest. And that is what you're building at Just AI. One thing I wanted to understand is about AI slop. Every time I talk to people, especially on the marketing side of things, I hear a lot about AI slop. People don't have seen enough of that. So, how are you navigating that? Because I'm pretty sure these are the questions you get asked by your clients.
Absolutely, yeah. So for context, we work with pretty large brands like Coursera and Pinterest for that matter. And the number one question they have is, how do I make sure that we don't sound robotic or like AI to consumers, right? And there's two aspects that we've very actively started exploring. The first one is, interestingly, the idea of anti-AI agents. It gets as recursive as you'd like it to.
Anti AI.
But the idea behind anti-AI agents is you're starting to think through not just minute things in terms of the words and the language we're speaking, but also doing lots and lots of verification after the fact, right? So if an AI agent is writing copy for you, right, instead of saying, hey, we'll just do better copy, now you have agents understanding, is this in the right context of what the business wants and what the product is about and what users are responding to, right? So that's one of the sort of AI started with creation. Now it's going into sort of the verification line of sight. And the other piece that comes with it is also explainability. So if you think about consumers getting context and content from us, it's not that they hate AI content. What they really mind is they don't want to hear deception. They don't want dishonest content, right? If the content is extremely relevant to me and I really want to see this video, I don't care if it's created by AI or not, right? As long as I know that it's relevant to me and I want something. So that those are the two like themes and concepts that we keep exploring.
Based on the responses of what the four of you have shared. So I would like to understand how dependable is AI really? Are we in any way, sort of overestimating, what AI is actually capable of? Maybe Sudeep, because you work with very messy systems.
Yeah, I would say in domains and use cases where you can actually come up with like an objective that is verifiable or measurable, AI can be really good and easy to adopt, right? You can maybe like add some guardrails, but and that's why kind of software engineering is like one of the domains where I would say it's still, there's a lot of AI slop that is actually like going into production, causing issues, but still by and large, a lot of the software engineering processes essentially like move to AI assisted coding. In other domains where judgment is way more nuanced, I think essentially you always want to have AI that works in an assistive manner with a human who ultimately exercises judgment. And that's I would say harder for sure.
You want to go?
I, um, I think my perspective is this is possibly true of any new technology, including AI, where you tend to overhype the near term and underhype the long term.
Are
Right?
we underhyping the long term?
I think this is the most profound change humanity's ever seen. So I absolutely think we are underhyping AI and its long-term potential. But no doubts, with any new technology, there are plenty of gaps in the near term. And we are building systems around it, either in the physical context or in the cloud context, to really bolster, if you will, capabilities or inherent weaknesses we have. But I absolutely think that I think play this out longer term, this is going to be the most profound change we have seen as a humanity.
Dipanwita, so same question, but I want you to come from the point of view of safety because if you look at safety, we are not having enough conversations about safety. So while, based on both of, we are probably overestimating in some aspects and underestimating, but, where do you see in terms of safety? Are we, over prepared? Maybe we be over prepared? Or what do you see? Because you are closely working with pharma companies on the safety space.
So I do want to echo what you said about we're hopelessly underhyping or not understanding what behavior change is and how long things will take to settle. I'll give you an example from our day to day. We sell to and we work with some of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. It takes them, what, 9 months or so to buy your product? Then it takes them another 4 or 5 months to implement it. Then another year from then to start to use it and get a handle on it, not to mention the extensive behavior change that we have to do. Mind you, those employees are people like you. So there's a consumer side to them. So from the consumer part of them, expect an AI system to work like logging in and asking a question and getting an answer. They expect a system that will plan your decision making around how to engage a doctor with the same ease that they would plan a holiday for you. The expectations are off. So that's one thing, is it's not the same and you can't expect that to happen. But also, when you think about this timeline, how many things have changed in the last year? We went from Gen AI to agents. Agents are up, agents are down, agents are over. So yeah, it, it's an absurd scenario to expect that there'll be any real world uptake and indications of whether what is safe or not if you're using it indiscriminately on like a weird timeline.
Neha, we all have very different ways of how we think AI is going to play out. And you work with people day in and day out. You were working with it. So how do you see that? Are we maybe in terms of enterprises you work with? How are you seeing it?
Um, but I think the concept and the theme is accurate in that right now we might be overestimating, and it comes from a place of fear where we worry about, are we losing jobs, or is the world going to look different, and have we not, are we the only one? There's a ton of FOMO in the room, no matter who we talk to, right? But the reality is adoption curves are always long. Like if you look at the history of things, right? It took what, 15 to 20 years for self-driving to be real in the US, and we'll talk about the
There
traffic
are
here, but
Waymos everywhere in San Francisco right now.
what's that?
We have Waymos everywhere in San
Yes,
Francisco
that's
right
right. Yeah, but it took a while, and the same is true for AI or any smart system. So in that sense, we are in so many ways overestimating what AI can do right now. But it's also true; it's the fastest growing technology ever. If you also look at the history of adoption, even, right? And so we were talking yesterday about, did we invest in AI at the right time, and if we didn't, what kind of things have we lost, right? And so that vision is needed up front because you are making an investment that's going to pan out in maybe 10 years and 15 years, and it's going to be worth it.
You brought a very interesting point, labor displacement. I think that is on everyone's mind too, in everyone's mind right now. But what we are seeing is we saw a whole wave, I think last year, 2024-ish, where companies laid off a bunch of employees, which is still continuing to a certain extent. And now what we are seeing is a lot of maybe some are hiring back. And what we are also seeing is a lot of these companies are increasing their cost uh, from subsidized to the costs are going up. So it's two parts, and I think I want Sudeep probably or even Krishna to answer. So how sustainable it is for companies to replace AI with humans, because all said and done, AI is still not extremely reliable. The cost keeps changing. How can you trust the system? So those, because both of you work in the frontier, so I would love to understand, like, can you really replace humans with AI right now?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there are certainly like some really repetitive processes which are in some ways like menial that are easy targets, right? So you can definitely like replace those with AI. They are already being replaced. And if you as an industry are in like one of those segments and you're not changing, then you would probably let just, yeah, go down at some point. I think there's the reason why we don't necessarily see that we still see like even the frontier labs actually hiring and hiring aggressively, and that's kind of a signal that not AI hasn't like made everything irrelevant, right? So in some ways, you see what has happened is we produce a lot more and a lot faster, and we're able to do a lot more. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we need less people. We actually need, in some ways, like more people to do those more
Maybe
things. We would just
different
do those
people.
things much faster. So technological progress is accelerated. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need less human resources or judgment in order to enable that.
Yeah, so I'll draw an analogy and try make my point. So go back 1900, we had horses and carriages, right? And comes automobiles. And we went through the same saga. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my jobs. No, we hired more people. Oh my God, I'm losing jobs. So I think it looks at the lens of, to look at it on a quarterly basis, you're going to see chaos. If you take a 20-year, 30-year perspective, we're going to end up creating more jobs. And I think that's going to be true of AI as well. I think the world's better off for automobiles today than horses. But if you ask somebody in 1900 what they're going to do with their jobs when they're horse specialists, they would give a very different answer. Right? So I think it's inevitable that technology and technology adoption is going to grow. And I think in my mind, AI is going to create eventually a lot more jobs than I think we have today. But I think the quality of the jobs or what's required of the jobs are going to be quite different. So no doubts, I think it's going to create a lot of chaos in the short term. If you take a 40, 50-year horizon outlook, and I'll bring it down to India, India could leapfrog the entire planet in terms of becoming a physical AI global product company, and they don't need to worry about any legacy. Right? So it's going to create opportunities for different societies in different ways. And my last comment is it's not about how it's impacting you, it's about what you're going to do with it.
We will come back to the India part we were talking about in a bit. But Neha, when we were chatting earlier, we were talking about the nature of workforce is changing. So how do you? I know the displacement in some ways is probably not truly equally avoidable. But how do you see the workforce changing? I think you and Dipanwita, because you work in life sciences, where human judgment matters a lot more than these software systems. So would love to hear both of you.
Yeah, totally. So I'll go back to maybe even 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we were talking a lot about AI literacy, and then everybody must learn AI. Now we're seeing a wave of not upskilling, but almost reskilling. So we're saying everything you were doing and just better is not going to work.
Just 1 second. What do you mean by reskilling and upskilling?
Yes, so upskilling, for example, will be here's how you do your workflow, but now slap AI on top of it, right? So if you are writing copy instead of writing it by hand, use whatever GPT to write copy, right? That's just a way of using AI to do the exact same thing. Reskilling is different, where it's saying actually step back, don't assume the same workflows, right? Don't assume that your workflow requires, I don't know, setting up a campaign and sending emails. Maybe it's different, right? So now you're reskilling and you're looking at how can you take a very ambiguous problem, figure out what is working, what's not in that problem, right? Instruct your agents how to do that job, right? Very different from understanding tools and skills that you were used to, right? Um, that's that's a very big mindset switch that's happening pretty much at the top level because they have to start thinking that way, and that's how all the conversations trickle down in terms of hiring or like how big the team should be, right? So does that make sense? That's sort
It
of
does.
what we're
It
seeing
makes
right
a
now.
lot more sense. I think that is applicable for all sectors, right? Not just in marketing. It's probably applicable for all sectors. Dipanwita, what are you saying?
So first, I'm not a fan of the word replace in people. It's just not how I see the world work. And I think we're seeing two trends that are worth exploring. One is in the US, at least, there is a real rise, and the blue collar workforce is more protected than the white collar workforce from the immediate near term impacts of AI. At the same time, as we saw with renewable energy, you were able to retrain the blue collar workforce to now work with different technology. But to Neha's point, it is a changing mindset. With AI, there are a couple of interesting things that I'm finding. The skill sets that the best people have in their ability to design really productive, effective systems are creativity It's an understanding of human decision making, it's philosophy, it's a sense of history, it's a lot of liberal arts, which is mostly absent in a very STEM focused education, and one that leads to very different decision making when you're solving a technical problem versus when you're trying to solve a business problem or actually help someone work differently or better. So that mental flexibility is really what we need. And we're finding that very senior people are falling behind when they're unable to embrace a new way of working entirely. And the ones that are dependent on their decision making will often leave a company if they're finding that their superiors are not being flexible or not designing a system that is considering AI plus humans as a fundamental way of working. So it is that flexibility.
Uh, we'll come back to India now. So you were talking about, so where do you see India in your roadmap? So India, we have our own sovereign AI play that we are seeing. We are trying to ramp up our infra play, and we have a whole load of companies that are working on the application space. So one is, it's two ways. So where do you see India and the global AI roadmap, and about your roadmap? You can start this, yes.
I have a hot take here.
Okay.
So for the last decade, we've seen India as the talent hub, and for what it's worth, still see it as a talent hub or an adoption economy, right? Um, I think it's time for us to think how much more can we own in terms of driving where the market should go. And India is one of the probably the only place that doesn't just have talent, but also complexity in the nicest ways. We were driving yesterday to Delhi, and I was thinking, how many brain cells does it take for someone to drive in India? Where you have two cars, but you also have a religious thing going on, and there's a sacred cow in front of you, and you got to manage all of it, right? Uh, to put that in perspective, if you can build AI systems that can manage that level of complexity, right? No other country has access to that, right? Um, and we're yet to start that sort of disruption in the country, right? That's where I see India playing a huge role, and I would love for our country to be that.
I hope we get there. Dipanwita.
Founders are a bit monomaniacally focused, or it's at least suggested that they be monomaniacally focused. So I'll contextualize this to Sorcero. Uh, a very, very large part of the pharmaceutical market is served by people in India. India has the largest number of STEM degrees. They're working in ontologies. They're working in medical writing. They're working in publishing papers. They're working extensively in pharmacovigilance, which is safety tracking of drugs. It also has the brains and the creativity as a country and a people to adopt these systems really well. So what I am very excited about is as we build out these tools and these workflows is to extend it to organizations and to people in India because they will pick it up and do with it with a level of creativity what almost no other country is able to do. And that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I would say India, when it specifically just comes to AI, has been innovating a lot in the application space.
Yes.
It's trying to also go into the more, I guess, the LLM ops and services place and how you can actually deploy AI within enterprises. The deep tech space, I think, is still nascent. I'm seeing like some companies who are actually operating in that space as well. But I think there's like a big opportunity there, right? India has the scale. As Neha mentioned, it has the complexity, it has the diversity. Each of them, pose really interesting challenges and opportunities for new deep tech innovation. And India has done that in other sectors, right? In pharmaceutical, India is like the drug supplier of the world because we can manufacture cheap drugs. In space technology, our unit cost of putting a satellite in space is significantly lower than the rest of the world. So there's no reason why India cannot do the same, let's say in the space of AI. It just has to like find its niche in AI, but it should not be afraid of doing deep tech.
Deep tech. Krishna?
I think that one negative in going after three smart people is I have very little to add. But I'll try add something controversial if I may. And
Oh,
so
please.
I
We love
think
that.
India is going to do great on AI in all aspects. I think that's a given. The question to me is, where can India be an AI global product leader? Right? And in that one, I really would say India has to play its strengths, and mimicking what the US and China are doing would not be what I would do. Right? I think competing with an Anthropic or a OpenAI or any foundation model, investing in farms of GPUs, just the capital outlay and the market competitiveness and the timing behind it. I think, in my mind, I think you're going to innovate for the needs of India, but I doubt at this stage I see India as a global player yet.
You don't see India as a
Yeah,
global player.
I think they're going to be challenged, right? Where I think India has an enormous opportunity is really in where AI is going to be. And if I were to pick two domains, I would really say physical systems, given the talent pool, including the deep tech opportunities India has. I think in physical systems that touches 1.4 billion people, I think India has a far better outreach, far better local consumption, but also an ability to be an export leader in products for robotics, for automation, for drones, for automotive. I think it's a massive opportunity. The other one would be biology.
Interesting.
So I think she covered that too. And in my mind, there isn't a society better poised to win and leap ahead in a global product leadership than these two. But I'm consistently surprised that India is doing too much to chase other people's paths. I would love for India to pivot to saying, hey, these are the two markets we're going after. These are our strengths. We're going to double down on the gaps we have and become a global product leader.
We have last 5 minutes. So one thing I want to, as a closing comment. So AI today is based on a lot of assumptions we are making about where we would be or where this technology is going to be in the next 5, 6, 10 years. So what is that one assumption that could go that could make things go horribly wrong, and what could be the cost of it? Just we have just literally 5 minutes, and yeah, just a minute each.
I think assuming that technology drives all decisions without any governance is flawed. There's a right balance of moving really fast, but also working very closely with policy. Like literally, this forum is a perfect example of what we need more of.
I think that we are going to see something break that's going to be big enough to actually put the brakes on a significant part of AI progress for a little bit. And we've seen that with other tech too.
I think assuming that AI is not going to affect a particular enterprise or whatever sector you are in, and yeah, basically don't be an ostrich and don't put your head in the sand, right? It is a disruption. I think you should embrace it and transform. But yeah, you have to be okay with that change.
So I would say two areas. I read this statistic. 87% of all AI usage doesn't have a revenue incremental or a profit pool. Okay? Another day, we're all greedy human beings and capitalism is going to rule. So what's going to break AI is if we don't know how to make money with AI. So we're investing in AI for the sake of AI. At some point, making money will make it important. Right? So that's one thing that could break AI. The second thing that would break it is I do think we are rushing into certain areas without safety and regulation. It's pretty scary that that one company could snoop another company and break through without oversight and
That's
safety.
very scary.
So those would be the two things that I think would worry about. But even before we worry about safety, I think if AI doesn't make money, this will be the biggest spend of money to make no money.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to extend because we still have 3 minutes. I can't let go of that unit economics question, that money question, what you all think, because I think that is on everyone's mind. Anthropic, OpenAI, there is just so much money going into it, but they're not what is going to happen. So yeah, quickly, we have literally 2 minutes. Quick.
Well, quick anecdote, right? To what you're saying. Twitter, the when we had Elon take over Twitter, right? It became a business, right? But the flip side of it was there was harm in different parts of the world that we had to take care of as well. So I think that balance is going to be super key.
Unit economics matter. I know my investors would like to see some returns, number one. And number two is that you can take a loss for a little bit, but you do need to design a system that is going to eventually get a profit at a respectable margin. Otherwise, we are going to have to shut these things down. And that is a fact of life.
Yeah, I think there's like two different places where unit economics has to be discussed. Like in enterprise applications, yes, absolutely. You should actually be very conscious of unit economics when you are actually using AI. But when it comes to, let's say, OpenAI, Anthropic, or other frontier labs, we are kind of still in the capacity building phase of AI, where we just need to make that investment. And it's not like AI is in some way special. Like if you look at the investment that went into like self-driving cars, we have like tens of billions of dollars that have gone into it. Have we had the returns there? No, not yet, but we still actually see a tremendous potential there. And I mean, if you go to San Francisco streets, more people are taking like self-driving cars these days, right? So, yeah, it's a bet, but I think it's mostly de-risked at this point, I would say.
I think the
Maybe that's a
jury is
hot take, yeah.
I think jury is still out. I think people have divided opinions. We'll stop there. Thanks a lot for joining us and for your insights. Thanks a lot for listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd love if all of you got together for a group photograph, capture this moment. Could we give it up? The wonderful set of speakers and a lot of smiles throughout that panel as we tackle questions, the big bets, and hopefully not the biggest spend on nothing, as Krishna said. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been hosting us really wonderful. It's my name.
It's just so good to talk and share. It's wonderful.
Thank you. What's your name and who's
Yeah,
it? And you're with
I work independently.
independently. Okay. Drop me a note.
I will.
We host events here in India. Love to really get your help.
Yes,
Send me an email. We'd love
I
to
will.
be in
I
touch.
do
Okay?
that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we've been cornering the topic of artificial intelligence from all angles. But there's one more word I think which has caught everyone's imagination these days, and that is longevity. Am I right? Yes? Longevity. Does that mean something to you? It's always about the latest diet, supplements, health hacks. And that is what we're going to be talking about in our next session. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this session, we're figuring out, I mean, there's so much stuff around which promises to add years to your life. The harder question is what finally survives contact with evidence? So, this is where our next session begins longevity in the Indian context, diet, supplements, myths. Our speaker, I'm privileged to announce, is an internationally recognized physician and scientist whose work spans gastroenterology, cancer treatment, artificial intelligence, and digital health. He is a professor of medicine at the University of Kansas. He currently serves as president of the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy and chairs the Artificial Intelligence Institute for Gastroenterology. Across more than 550 publications, his contributions include the Prague classification system and pioneering work in endoscopic cancer treatment. He is also a recipient of the Padma Shri. Ladies and gentlemen, a session I'm really looking forward to help us separate evidence from the assertion. Please welcome Dr. Prateek Sharma. And I'm happy to say that this session will be followed by Q&A with the speaker. So take notes. We'll pass around mics, introduce yourself and put forth your question. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Dr. Prateek Sharma. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? It's good? Okay, perfect. So yeah, let's start with this. So before we get into the slides lecture, let's just have some show of hands. So how many of you here want to live until at least 90 or 100 years? Well, the fact that you're here, you probably want to, right? That's the reason you're here in this session. And if you were to live to 90 or 100, how many of you want to spend the last 10 or 15 years of that life in the hospital being sick? Okay, probably no one, right? So that's where we need to figure out how India becomes not just the longer living society, but also one of the healthiest society. Because as all of you have pointed out, you want to live long, but you also want to live healthy. So I'll just go over in the 15 minutes just talking about different myths which may or may not be true. So let's see what this happens. So the first question is, which everyone asks, or when the patients come in, they'll be, my parents live to 95, so I can do whatever I want, eat, sleep, drink, and I will also live up to be 95 years of age, okay? So is this true or not? So what determines your lifespan? That's the question. So these are twin studies in which they looked at what the life estimate was amongst twins and how divergent it was. And if you look at a correction factor, maybe it's about 50%, which means that the genes are important, so as to say they load the gun, but the environment and lifestyle are the ones which pull the trigger as well. So just because your parents lived up to a very long lifespan, which is good for them, doesn't necessarily mean that you will be doing exactly the same thing. So if you believe this study, and let's say it's not 25%, let's say if it's even 50% that is being contributed by genes, that means the other 50% is in your hands with lifestyle, environment, and what you do with your diet and your sleep. So today, longevity is not just about living up to being 100 years of age. The term that we now end up using is health span. So what it means that it's not just longer years of life, but something with more energy, less disease. So that was the question is, if you live up to 100, if you're in the hospital or you're even at home bedridden from 80 to 100, that's probably not meaningful at all. Your productivity should be high during this time period. Otherwise, why do you want to live up to be 100? Of course, your cognitive performance should be there. Dementia, Alzheimer's is increasing in prevalence. Between 80 and 100, you don't recognize anybody of your family. Is that something worth living for or not? So, longevity by itself doesn't mean much unless the health span, productivity, your cognitive performance, and of course, your independence is all maintained during that span. Also, I mean, the average age here must be about 40, 50, 60, whatever it is. It doesn't start at that age. So you can see that the gut microbiome can start becoming dysbiotic, meaning abnormal, even in the 20s. When you're in your 30s, that's when now most of the people in India start developing type 2 diabetes, which means insulin resistance starts in your 30s. In your 40s, if you have a high BMI, obesity, visceral adiposity, you may develop a fatty liver. And of course, then you have the whole problem of obesity, which is an epidemic in pretty much the entire world these days. And as this progresses, you can see that chronic inflammation comes about, cellular damage happens, and that's when the biologic clock starts ticking. So it can happen even in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, not just in your 60s, which is a myth, I think. So India has a specific problem, which is a paradox, and I'll talk about that. These are the numbers. These are not good numbers. We don't want to be number one in the world for some of these things, which we unfortunately are. Diabetes, fatty liver, cardiovascular disease. You hear of heart attacks in younger individuals these days. And of course, cancer, which is the most deadly outcome that you can see. The paradox is that the vast majority of the population in India is young, but yet all these diseases up there continue to increase in prevalence. So although we are a young nation and we always are proud about that, which we should be, but there is a paradox there. And partly it's because of the rising obesity, persistent undernutrition, or bad nutrition, and more sedentary lifestyles which exist in the population. So think about it in terms of your health rather than just living up to being 100 years of age. Also, it becomes important not just for you if you live 5 extra years, but what does it do for the country? I think that's the more important thing for the economy. And so it shouldn't just be a health statistic, but a workforce statistic as well as something which helps, the nation as it grows. This is a study done in Oxford. India was not studied as part of this, but let's see how it would relate to the Indian economy. But they looked at what happens if in the US, Japan, and the UK, and every individual were to live 5 additional healthy years, okay, not just extra years. In the US, the economy would boom by $51 trillion. So it's not just you're living longer, but healthier, and you are contributing to the economy of the country. So if you were to put those same numbers for India, it would increase the economy by up to about $200 billion per year for every year of healthy life expectancy which is gained. This was not part of the study. This is just my extrapolation of the numbers from this study for the Indian population. So it's also in the interest of the government, the policymakers, as well as society in general to make sure that we are not just living longer, but also healthier, because it does impact the economy as we do that. Now let's move on to the second myth, which is about diet. Okay, and so there's always a myth that there is some magic diet. So as a gut doctor, I get asked that all the time: is the patient's there or a relative is on the phone and it's like, what diet should I be on? Because I want to clear my gut. I want to have a healthy gut. I want to be absolutely disease free. So let's look at what the evidence suggests. Okay, so let's go by science rather than just me telling you what it is. This is one of the largest run studies, which is called the PREDIMED study. So it's a randomized control trial, which is the best sort of evidence that you can get in the scientific literature, in which participants were randomized either to take the Mediterranean diet, all of you are familiar with that, which is rich in vegetables, fruits, olive oil, things like that, less carbohydrates, and versus a low-fat control diet. What they showed was a 30% reduction in heart attacks in those patients or subjects who were on a Mediterranean diet. So the data does exist scientifically that it is important and diet is there. Even in India, there are studies which we sometimes fail to recognize, or more importantly, fail to follow in our practice. So this is in Indians, they were randomized to either control or lifestyle modification. So to help the lifestyle of the individual. What they showed was that the lifestyle changes were able to cut the risk of diabetes by 33%. So you have evidence in this country that you can actually make a difference on the diseases which are of high prevalence in the country. So rather than saying that stick to one diet, this is what every strong longevity diet has in common. Minimally processed foods, so no ultra processed foods that all of us love to eat and snack on. Adequate protein, not very high protein. A diversity in the plants that you take, because the gut microbiome loves that diversity. So if you like dal, don't eat just one type of dal every day for 7 days a week. Diversify that, because the gut microbiome will enjoy that. Fewer refined sugars. So sugar, of course, is bad. We know that. So, and of course, enough fiber, which is very gut friendly and is extremely important for you. And India, no matter what part of the country you are from, already has this rich tradition. It's just that we choose to ignore that tradition, and we are trying to westernize it more and trying to stay away from the actual diet, which may be helpful to all of us that you should be doing. Myth number 3. How many of you are interested in the microbiome? Okay, so virtually everyone, right? So is the microbiome just a wellness trend, or does it actually mean something for you? So it really is important because it is a pathway from the mouth or your palate, so what you enjoy eating, to diseases. So let's look at how this happens. So when you eat, all of this feeds your microbiome. The microbiome consists of millions and trillions of bacteria and viruses and yeast in your intestines. This is important so that you can have a good metabolism in your gut. If it is bad, it can lead to inflammation. It can hasten the aging process and can lead to the development of diseases. So the gut is really your second brain. You should be paying attention to it. And food is not just making you happy, it's actually making all those good bacteria in your body happy as well, so that you can live a healthy life as you go towards it. Now, let's look at some studies as to how this happens. So, this is a study out of Stanford in which they took just a plain high fiber diet, which was very consistent, no diversity in the diet, versus a fermented food diet, which was diverse. And they checked inflammatory markers. And in the diet, which was very diverse with high fermented food, which in the Indian diet is your dahi, yogurt, idli, dosa, whatever you eat, all of that will reduce the inflammation in your body. So you already have that in your diet. You don't need to go out and buy expensive probiotics in order to feed your gut or to make you feel healthy in that situation. And the disease, meaning cancer, does not appear overnight. It's a long process which starts with inflammation. So that's why keeping the gut healthy and not having it inflamed is extremely important because of this pathway. And you have these prevention windows in which it can be prevented for some of these precancerous conditions, such as colon cancer, fatty liver, which can go on into liver cancer, etc. So it's important to recognize why this is important to you. The next myth is supplements are important, and they are the answer to everything. How many of you take supplements on a daily basis? Okay, so quite a few are into supplements. So the supplement research actually is not that great. It's quite weak. And the reason is because these are mainly observational trials, not the good scientific evidence, as I said, with randomized trials. Short duration, you don't have long duration studies, so you don't know whether it truly impacts your lifespan or not. And the claims, unfortunately, are much stronger than the evidence. So where is the evidence the strongest? So look at this. Stop smoking, good control of blood pressure, physical activity, and a healthy diet that I mentioned. This has the strongest evidence towards these are all supplements that you can do and take care of yourself. It's high for things like vaccination. We talked about high fiber diet, high diversity in your diet. It's moderately higher for like good sleep and social engagement. So there's a randomized trial which showed that dementia risk was significantly lower in folks who went and socialized rather than just sitting at home, sitting and watching TV all day long. So it's important to recognize that. Some of the anti-aging drugs have either emerging evidence or insufficient evidence from a scientific perspective at this time. So here are some studies. Vitamin D, good evidence. Protein, good evidence. Creatine, also good evidence, especially if you work out. Omega 3, also good evidence there. So there are certain supplements which have good evidence for you to start taking. So the gut is your second brain, and you should try to follow your gut score, which means that how well does your gut do in terms of diversity, your diet, inflammation, and we are in the process of developing this score, which you could calculate on an app and see whether your gut is healthy or not. So it becomes important to start looking at some of these factors as we move along it. The last myth, the future will be sold in bottles to all of you, right? It's actually already being sold as that you buy this, you live longer, very happy. And the reason you're happy is because you're paying a lot of money for that bottle, right? So you have to say it works. So rather than that, I think that the future will be coming from prediction rather than looking at just bottles. So rather than measuring a blood pressure once a week or once a month that many of you with high blood pressure may be doing, it probably will be coming from continuous data sets. So if you have a variable, that's one of that, you can look at CGM or continuous glucose monitoring, biomarkers following your microbiome. How about the age? Very soon, the age will be not measured by what's on your birth certificate or in your passport. Okay, so your age will be determined by your epigenetics, which is your biologic age, by something like your grip strength, which will tell you how old are you actually. What's your gait? Do you have a good balance? How fast can you walk? What's your VO2 max? Can you walk up a flight of stairs without falling short of breath? If you do it at 50, you're short of breath, you're probably not 50, you're probably 70 years old. But at 80, if you're still running at a slow speed, 10 miles a day, you're probably 50 years of age, as well as your obesity or your visceral adiposity. So this will measure your age in the future rather than just your physiological age as well. So the longevity clinic of the future will be with AI, which is the theme as we've heard at the forum all along. And it will produce a risk prediction. It will give you a nutrition plan. It will tell you what your exercise prescription should be and what sort of continuous monitoring that you need. Not once a year, not once a month, but on an ongoing, continuous basis all throughout the day and the year. And for India, this will be through an AI health companion that all of us will have on our smartphones so that we will all be able to get into prevention rather than treatment. So diagnose and prevent the diseases rather than spending time in the corporate hospitals. So the corporate hospitals should invest in wellness rather than in treating of the sick patients. So from sick care to smart prevention, that will happen. So those are all the good news, but there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. Can we actually truly slow the biologic age? We still don't know that. Can we just detect it early or can we actually slow it or not? The microbiome, there's a lot of research happening. I've shared some of it with you. Can it actually become a therapeutic target? It's being tried. We don't know what will happen with that. And we've heard a lot about AI. There's promise there. But can it prevent diseases for the billions? Or will it just be for those very few who can afford it? And I think these are some of the questions that will define medicine and healthcare over the next couple of decades. So thank you all very much for your attention.
So we're going to open the floor to questions. We're going to pass around a mic and you can just introduce yourself. I mean, stand up idly, introduce yourself, and just put forth your question. Could we have, yes?
Hi, my name is Tarun Jain. I run a company called Dario Health. We're a digital therapeutics company. Just not looking for an endorsement, but there are like too many variables around. Like, would you like to recommend what things people should look for when they are looking for a variable that can measure their overall health?
Yeah, so good question. I mean, so part of the things with variables and all the data that we collect is that we can collect the data for some of those things, or I would say for quite a few things, we don't know what the data actually means, right? So you could measure today your HRV, right? But what does that actually translate into? There's no good evidence that that means anything. Good quality of sleep, on the other hand, we know is linked to cardiovascular risk, for example. So that would be a good outcome to measure. Baseline heart rate, or what's your heart rate while you're sleeping. So that would be a good outcome to measure. So I think a number of the variables are there, but how does that translate into actual outcomes, I think, is what needs to be shown.
Hi, sir. This is Santosh Srivastava. I'm a co-founder of a health tech company, Alpha Human. So I wanted to understand, you said genomics load the gun. So how important it is to understand the DNA data to personalize the plan for individual vis-a-vis one size fits all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's absolutely important to do it, right? So the point I was making is not to exclude that 20% or 50%, whatever it is, but telling you that that's probably, at least today,
Yeah.
until DNA or gene therapy comes and becomes mainline, you can alter the genetic profile as well, which you can't do today, but you can definitely change the other 50 to 70 or 80%, right? But yes, the full profile would include your regular biomarkers, inflammatory biomarkers, but also your DNA markers.
Yeah, not modifying the DNA, but at least we understand
Absolutely.
the mutations, then
Yes.
we can customize the treatment according
Yes,
to
the
that.
personalized treatment will be based on that. Absolutely.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so I have promised her a question because she's been asking right from the beginning. So two questions, no problem. But we'll just wrap it.
Hello, sir. Sir, can I ask you, can I continue with my intermittent fasting because I've been used to it for the last 7 years? And second question, should we have our Mira 1 test done? Just too small.
Okay, so good question is, so the first was intermittent fasting.
Intermittent, because I'm used to it.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like stopping it.
So again, I mean, just following up on the previous question about, personalized treatment. So intermittent fasting, as we heard, wasn't working that great for your son, but I think it seems to be working very good for you. So I think you have to personalize some of these things as well, including the diet therapy as well. So I would recommend that try these things, figure out which diet as well as intermittent fasting works. If it's doing well for you, there are many patients who do their CGM and their blood sugar fluctuates a lot with intermittent fasting. But when they get on a diet like a Mediterranean diet, it's much better. So do that. The other one is the MIRA-1 testing, which looks into some of these markers, including the pharmacogenomics. So before you get on some of the medications, that may be a good test for you to be doing.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Dr. Pradeep. My name is Madhulika, and I'm into brand consulting. So, first of all, I think just one thing before the question, you spoke very affectionately about the India coming together to make it healthier rather than we looking at ourselves individually. And that's a very important thing since all of us are here at a platform where it's relevant to focus on that. My question is, or rather an observation is, when you were presenting about a lot of things about the supplements, about the diet, there was one aspect about our mental state, especially we're living in a very high stress level environment surrounding, right? Different types of stresses. So is there an aspect of that you would like to maybe highlight a bit about how much our mental state has a, aspect and effect on longevity?
Right, absolutely. So I think, of course, being biased, I mean, the gut is the center of all of this. And I think there are a number of things which impact the gut as well as the longevity. I mentioned briefly, of course, about the diet, supplements, etc. But stress, of course, plays a major role. And that's the reason, for example, I call the gut the second brain. And the example I give is, before an important meeting, before an examination, you get the feeling of, sick to your stomach, butterflies in your stomach. That is the gut brain axis. And so the stress or the brain plays an extremely important role in it. Stress impacts your quality of sleep, which impacts your gut, which impacts your degree of inflammation, which has an impact on aging and diseases. So absolutely, all of those are completely interlinked.
I think could we please have a big round of applause? I think the signs of such a successful session that the questions are just not stopping. But hopefully, you'll have time to meet our audience members who definitely are going to now meet you. And so you can get your questions answered. But let's have a big round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I wonder though if hospitals will like the idea of preventive, the app that you talked about building. I wonder if hospitals would be down with that. I think they prefer prefer treating the symptoms. So thank you so much. So now, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we talked about energy, right? A different kind of energy through our sleep, nutrition, and supplements. So now we talk about India's energy transition from ambition to action. We're well aware that India's energy transition has moved beyond a statement of intent. It's now a question of pace and how quickly national ambition can be translated into infrastructure, investment, and cleaner choices across the economy. Now, moving at this pace will require policy and industry to work in step while ensuring, of course, that this transition remains commercially viable at scale. So, this brings us to our next panel, India's energy transition from ambition to action. Without further ado, pleased to say that all our speakers are here. Joining us, our Group Chief Executive Officer of Suzlon, Ajay Kapoor. Welcome, sir. Managing Director of Omega Seiki Mobility, Uday Narang. Executive Director at Grant Thornton Bharat LLP, Pradeep Singhvi, and former Director General of the International Solar Alliance, Ajay Mathur. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen. Moderating the discussion is Senior Editor at Times Experiences, Ashutosh Sinha. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to all the big guns. So, welcome to all the. One more. One more chair coming up. We'd also like to invite Shashank Sharma, CEO, Sunsure Energy, to join us. Power pack session full of energy. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for all our speakers. And of course, it's over to you, Ashutosh.
Thank you so much. Thank you indeed. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being a patient audience and joining us. I'll get into the questions start straight away. And Dr. Mathur, first to you. India is seen as a leader in the global south. As we move ahead, how do we take this leadership ahead and plan for the days beyond 2030, 500 gigawatts or 50% of our installed capacity as renewable power?
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. I must confess that it has been a secret ambition of mine, not so secret actually, to ensure that we are able to influence the world. After all, when other developing countries look to us, they see that in, say, 2007, 2008, we were similar to where all the developing countries were. But in the last 15 years, we have jumped ahead. That has been the result of policies. It has been the result of technologies. It has been the result of services that we have provided. I will argue that we need to provide these products, these policies, these services to the rest of the world. Now, how do we do that? Very short answer to your question. We need to utilize the kind of goodwill that we have created. For example, the International Solar Alliance, which I was part of till about a year ago, is one such organization. We created something called the One Sun, One World, One Grid program. Through it, we can talk of bilateral bilateral agreements with other countries on the service of green electricity. It helps us and it helps them. I think what it does is it helps the world move quicker towards green electricity.
Okay, that's moving to greener or to cleaner sources of energy, probably the wider picture. Ajay, Suzlon started more than 30 years ago. How are you evolving with the evolution? Can you know? Can we think of a world where maybe some of the fossil fuels are sort of only the base load? Can we think of that world? And in India, maybe?
Very good question. Actually, as we sit today, 50% of India's capacity is already become RE capacity, as we call it. India is amongst the fastest growing markets outside of China in the world. We talk of RE, there are two major sources. Solar, which has done exceedingly well over the last decade or so. And wind, of course, is a more mature player, which has, and we were part of that journey. So today, India has almost 1100 gigawatts of wind potential. Interestingly, we have only harnessed 5% of that. And the challenge is putting up wind needs a lot of effort on the ground. I have, Shashank here, he knows it. How difficult it is to, make a project come to life, because you have to acquire land, you have to get permits, and then there are execution. So the way we are thinking in order to harness wind, because the best combination for the nation is to have a mix of solar plus wind plus battery. Because what we are moving towards is a FDRE, a 24/7 green solution, which is only possible and to get at a right price is not just the quantity, but also the quality and the cost. That I think can only come when we are able to harness all the two sources, major wind and solar. Of course, hydro is there. But I think what we are doing is we are building ahead of time DEFCO-led initiative of a company wherein we go acquire land 3 to 4 years ahead of time, get the permits, and then sit with our customers and try and solve their problems so that we can bring parallel activities rather than sequential in order to make India more competitive on the green side.
So Shashank, since Ajay's mentioned about the difficult work that you're having to do, can you just elaborate a little bit on the industrial side of it? That green transition has to be led by industries, some of them hard to abate. What are some of those challenges?
Ashish, I think we do great injustice to the cause by calling it transition. I would rather call it a revolution, because that's what it is. The first revolution was coal. Then we shifted to oil, and now we're getting into the era of electricity, and we should call it the electrostate. Everything that is going to be powered in the next few decades is going to be through electricity. And in every era, the cheapest form of energy will win. Right? Today, that form is solar and wind. Right? And that's why you're seeing the sort of deployment that you're seeing. And as Ajay was mentioning, wind definitely is challenging on the ground, but I think those are operational challenges that he was talking about, operational challenges that we see in India about acquiring land, ROWs, transmission, and those things. But to the broader question that green transition and industrial progress are interlinked, there you should see the macro picture that today, with the advent of AI, we are seeing some of the dollars that we were earning in Forex is going down because our service economy, the services export economy is going to go down, right? The only way we'll be able to, when the service economy go down, the only way we'll be able to recover or get those dollars that we were getting in the yesteryears is through making our manufacturing more competitive, right? So manufacturing has to become more competitive. For manufacturing to become more competitive, in fact, everything, right? Manufacturing to become more competitive, you need to have the cheapest form of electricity, right? That today, solar wind, it's not still as firm as coal, right? But we want to get there. At Sunshore, I keep telling people when we got independent, right to equality is a right in our constitution. We might never get there, but we are better than 1947, right? So it's the same is the case with renewables. We might never get to the firmness of coal, but let's keep progressing towards getting there, coming as close to coal as possible. If we do that, the electrostate that we are going to become, India is going to be a massive superpower there with very competitive manufacturing.
Okay, Uday, everyone here in the audience, you love Uday speaking because he speaks his mind, and I love hearing him. So, Uday, as a consumer, and since Shashank has already mentioned that stability that some of the fossil fuel, maybe coal, provides in a for a company that's a consumer of renewable power, what are some of those challenges you face, and how can that be improved? What would you ask Shashank in a one-to-one meeting?
First of all, great to be here, and to be part of these events really shows how far India has come in green energy and sustainability. And this is something that is again very close to my heart. First of all, we've got to, we were talking earlier about the Chinese have put up a massive EV grid. They put up a system where at the end of the day, energy independence is the biggest agenda of our country. We are 90% importer of energy, and that has not changed much. We have moved towards it, but in my personal view, we haven't moved fast enough. Now, if people will say EVs are being juiced up by brown energy, right? That to me is there's a double-edged sword. If we were to be able to bring more EVs, I don't mind even for the short term if you're using the brown grid, because if we set up, it takes time. They say if you want to build Rome, it will take time. In India, we want to build Rome every day. It doesn't really happen that way. So my point is that if we're able to put a combination of brown and green, right, and absolutely solar, wind, wind's going to play a very, very major role in. So your company has done phenomenal work in this space. We've got to be able to put hydro and a mixture of enough electricity that we can set up, enough charging infra. The EVs will come in the two-wheelers, the three-wheelers, the one-ton truck. The total cost ownership model works. I think this has to be a public-private partnership. For me, that since the total cost ownership model is working, I don't have a problem of putting more vehicles on the ground. It's not me. The entire ecosystem is moving towards that. And the sooner, whether it is, and I think the solar industry can play a major, major role in this. But I'll also say more needs to be done. Enough has been done in wind, but more needs to be done. This has to be an agenda of our country. I want to tell you one thing. We are importing all oil. So for me, putting that infrastructure, and infrastructure, my friends, take time. We have to have a long-term vision. We have to be a public-private enterprise in this country. We want to build the third largest economy in the world. But if oil is at $100 a barrel and we drop down in 4 months, we've not thought something through. So I think for me, as a consumer, I want more movement towards green, but I want to have enough energy that the foreign dependence goes away. And I think that has to be an agenda of all of us, whether we are a large company or a small company. And I think that agenda also, sir, depends on all of us. And they say, Modi ji to clean karenge in this country ko, hum logon ko karna hai. So it is an important part of our agenda to make this happen.
Fantastic. The energy independence. That will also come, Pradeep, if we not just talk solar and wind only. There are other forms, and essentially as consumers, as everyone, they also need to be the consumer of some of the other sources as well.
Thanks, Ashutosh. So I think it's a very important questions, and our focus is on wind and solar. We have achieved very good progress in solar and wind. So if I talked about this transition or revolution mentioned by the Shashank also. So in last 10 year or in last decade, we focus on four things. One is megawatt, second is capacity, third is subsidy, fourth is central. So I think we need to shift the focus from these four things to megawatt to molecules, which is like green hydrogen, green ammonia, decarbonization of hard to abate sector. The second point is like capacity to firm power. From solar and wind, we can get the power during the daytime, but for the round the clock power, we need battery energy storage, round the clock power, time of day, pump storage. So the second thing should be from capacity to your this firm power. Third is subsidy. So now we need to focus on subsidy to the bankability. So we have given a lot of subsidies. Now we need to scale up the climate finance. Whatever we have done based on the domestic finance. Our domestic finance has done the heavy lifting in achieving these renewable energy targets or green power targets. So now we need to attract the international climate finance also. And for this international climate finance, I would say we need to quickly finalize our climate taxonomy, which is still in under draft from many months or I think 1 year. So because India is a big country and we can attract a lot of climate finance, and I would say India is the biggest destination for the climate investment. We need $2.5 trillion by 2030 to achieve our NDC targets and $10 trillion to achieve our net zero target. So if we want to achieve these targets, we need to definitely attract the climate finance. And the fourth point is central. Whatever we have achieved this 300 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel capacity, now the remaining 200 gigawatt is depends on the state executions. So we need to shift these aspect to these four aspects. Another part is that the generation is always the easiest part of this transition, and the hard part is the grid storage part, battery energy storage, pump hydro storage, underground energy storage also. Here I would like to highlight one more thing. We are talking about battery energy storage or the pump storage, all these things. All these things are above the ground. The another part is there's a huge potential available underground energy storage. That is also energy. So you can store compressed air, you can store CO2, you can store other things also. So considering the geopolitical situation, the government of India or the country can focus on the underground storage. India has a huge potential in the northeastern region, in western region for the underground energy storage also. And it will definitely give edge to achieve the energy security also. So if we want to become a manufacturing hub or if we want to attract manufacturing investment, if we can provide clean, affordable and security, green power, affordable power or secure power, then we can attract huge investment for the country as well.
Asha,
Yeah, sure.
just to the point that he mentioned, in fact, on the global balance sheet in investing, 2025 was the first year when clean energy got twice the investment that oil got. So $2.2 trillion of investment in clean energy versus $1 trillion in oil. So that is the first time that clean energy has got more investments than oil. And even in India, I think 83% of whatever investments have happened in power sector are clean energy investments. So we are anyways attracting a lot of talent. I think it's the biggest investment opportunity in decades that we see here in India.
Okay, that's the global picture as well. Dr. Mathur, the consumer at the heart is at the heart of the change, must be at the heart of the change that's happening. But regulators will also need to factor in some of the battery, the best part that is evolving and changing the dynamics. So how, and also the discoms, you have to keep the discoms in mind. So what regulatory shift is needed to make sure that this accelerates the transition? And I'm using the word transition, Shashank, please. Revolution,
You have
okay.
to use revolution. Transition
Okay.
is smaller.
Okay.
So, Ashutosh, there are three things that are important. The first is that we need to find people who will invest in battery storage. To get people to invest, you need people like
Consumers.
You need consumers. And for consumers to be there, you need to ensure that they get electricity when they want it. In other words, move towards capacity pricing. That's the first. The second is you need to make sure that the battery is available for generation at the time you want, which means that you must have time of the day pricing at least as far as the procurement of electricity by the transmission company. You know, many of us don't like time of the day because we are not very sure, supposing it's cheaper at 3 o'clock in the morning, will there be electricity at 3 o'clock?
Sir, time of the day I've been hearing since my hair was black.
Yeah. Well, I would say you still have black hair. I don't have any hair. But the point is, let's separate out the time of the day which you and I pay as consumers and which discoms pay as the buyers of electricity from the distribution companies. I think they need time of the day. Because if they get time of the day, they are sure to buy the electricity that you want. And they will manage the price so that they're able to supply it to you. That's the second part. The third is, as you rightly said, we need to focus on new developments. We've got a good scheme called the PLI, the Performance Linked Incentive Scheme. We need to focus on new chemistries. I would argue that we need to link this to forward procurement. You know, why is it that every time we need batteries, we go in and buy technology from outside? Why is it that we don't develop these technologies in country? I will argue that what we need are linkages between the policies that we have. We need more storage, as everybody has said. Let us link that. We want efficiencies of, currently the batteries have turnaround efficiencies of about 80%. That means you charge them and discharge them and you get a total of about 80%. Say I want 85% by 2030. Say I want 90% by 2035. It forces the battery developers to develop new technologies which can meet those goals. It will force them, and it's not new. We have done this in the past. We have done it with air conditioners. It works. My central argument is that we need to link technology development and progressive procurement to that technology development. So those are the three things we need to do in order to move ahead on batteries.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so
A brief answer and then I take one round with everyone.
So sir mentioned about the technology development. I just want to add one more thing. So like Government of India has launched the program RDI, Research, Development and Innovation. It is 1 lakh crore fund for the deep tech technology. So startup and industry can take benefit if they feel their technology will fail. So the Government of India is ready to support it. Another is NRF fund, Anusandhan Research Foundation, Anusandhan National Research Foundation. So means I would urge to startup and industries, they can utilize these kind of fund to test their technology, to develop the prototype and to scale up these things.
Okay, since we've had everyone speak, one question, and Ajay, if I can begin with you, on what should be the pillars for India's leadership to move ahead? And that will be my question for everyone as well. As in beyond the 2030 stated goal, we have 50% of our installed capacity is renewable. 500 gigawatts, and we are looking beyond.
Absolutely. So let's get our numbers right. We are at 200 and almost 300 gigawatt already there of RE plus nuclear plus hydro, which is part of RE. Our target is to hit 500. Uh, I think of the 500, another 200, 250 are already under implementation in various stages. That leaves the last 50 to 60, which I'm sure is going to happen. But the question is also parallelly the grid. Grid also needs to, keep pace with it. A good marriage between solar and wind. Solar works beautifully in the morning hours, but then there is a curtailment happening because of the natural challenges in the grid. Wind works beautifully well in the evening. So how do we marry between the two and bring battery? I believe today we have capacity of close to 82 gigawatt for storage. This needs to also go to 400 over the next 4 to 5 years. And above all, India today is exporting in the wind sector, which I represent. Almost we have a capacity of 24 gigawatts, and India needs about 8 to 10 over the next 3 to 4 years. So there's a substantial build-up happening. India can become 20% supplier to the world for the wind. So I think that's something we can also earn good revenue for the country for that.
Uday, stability of the grid?
Clear, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Just
Clearly to me, right? I mean, I'm a Martin Luther King fan. Spent enough years in the States. I remember his speech of "I have a dream." I do have a dream that in this country, we have a very large capacity of green energy and sustainability. That what made me come back to this country. I know it's a long haul. Yes, we need the stability of the grid. Yes, we need R&D. Yes, we need investments. Yes, we need to build. But this has to be every citizen's responsibility. हम लोग कहते हैं भारत माता की जय. अपनी माँ की जय करने के लिए let's all commit to putting our own money at work. And when I say we put our money at work, I come from the financial markets. Put money in companies that are focusing on this. And my only thing is, let's not all run 100-meter sprints. Let's think long term. Let's think 10, 15, 20. We want to think about our younger generation. We want to think about, I don't want all of them lot in Jantar Mantar. I want them working in our companies that are going to make this country great. And see, what it has to happen is, there is no solution. We talk about green energy. कहते बहुत महंगी है. Sorry, my PR guy is going to say I start speaking Hindi. But what I want to say is, if we do not invest long term, then this dream of making the third largest economy, and this is not going to happen from gig workers, man. Please, let's forget about that. We've got to make energy independence number one agenda. And for me, if it costs more in the short term, let's think long term. तभी गेम बैठेगी, नहीं तो फिर यहीं घूमते रहेंगे. That's my only say.
150 billion plus that we are spending on just petroleum imports. That just gives you an idea. Pradeep,
So,
if you can keep the mic closer.
yeah. So my point is that we have ambition, we are focusing on the technology, but the most important component is the cost of finance. So unless if we can't manage the cost of finance, it's difficult to achieve the target, whatever we are looking for.
Dr. Mathur?
Three things. I'm sorry, Ashutosh, it's going to take it'll take a minute. First, we need to ensure that all of the capacity that Mr. Kapoor builds is actually used. We need to ensure that it is transmitted. One of the very, very, very quick ways of doing so is looking at today's lines, convert them from fixed rating to dynamic rating. It will need sensors to be put in because he produces energy when it is windy. And when it is windy, the
Evenings.
transmission lines don't heat up. That means that all you need to do is to put sensors on those lines in order to enhance their rating. Very, very simple to do. Second, the point which you made, we need to ensure that more international money comes. We are already come to the point where solar plus wind plus storage is the cheapest form of electricity, even cheaper than coal. But Why is it not happening? We need, first of all, to focus on policies for land, policies for lines, and policies for money. Because while the cost is lower, the first cost is higher. And for the first cost, we need to focus on the fact why is 74% of the global money going to the OECD countries and China? Why is it not coming to countries like India and Brazil and Ghana and Uganda,
Where the impact will be bigger.
where the impact will be much more? And the answer is the financiers are uncomfortable in lending to companies in these countries. Government guarantees would help. What we found was that people generally repay the loans. And does happen is they are late in repaying. That does happen. Therefore, guarantees would help a great deal. And apart from that, mortgages and green bonds would help a great deal as well. I will argue, therefore, that with this group of policies, 3 policies, we will be able to cross not only the 500 gigawatts, but much more.
Shashank.
So, Ashutosh, my feeling is that we are entering in an era of deep electrification, right? And looking at the per capita income of India, and if you compare it with the developed countries, US's per capita income is 30x of ours, right? So as the per capita income increases, the per capita energy consumption is also going to increase, and the demand is going to come from everywhere, like EVs, digital economy, AI, data center industries, everywhere, right? And you know, there are enough companies that exist in the country who have the ability to set up as much solar and wind that we want. Okay. As far as capital is concerned, I think for good organization, there is no dearth of capital today in the country. That's the reality. Okay. I haven't heard of any project where they couldn't raise debt or couldn't get equity if the project was right or the company was strong, right? So capital we are getting enough capital from the foreign markets. India is a darling. By the way, renewable energy sector is a darling. We've raised a lot of capital. We own all solar, wind, battery, all sorts of assets, right? The only thing that the foreign investors, as far as capital is concerned, are concerned about is the policy certainty, right? What we do here is like we have 27 state regulatory commissions who build their own policies and regulations, and one is different from other. You have to, if you enter in a state, you have to thoroughly understand their regulation, and if you just cross the border, it changes, right? So that is something that we have to sort. And while central government has been trying to come out with some standard stuff across the country, we still haven't been able to do that. Unfortunately, when the constitution was made, this was a concurrent subject. It remains to be a concurrent subject, and that's why we will continue to bear the brunt of it. But that is one thing that, if we sort out clear policy regulations and similar across the country, it'll, I'm telling you, the regulatory cholesterol that you have today, that will be gone to an extent that we'll be able to set up everything. India has enough resilient entrepreneurs, companies to do what India needs, right? We want to make it energy independent. We want to make it economically independent. We will do that, right? But that's one thing that we want.
So fantastic point to end the conversation on. I'll just add one context to that. India touched 1 million mobile subscribers in 99 after it was launched in 95, and was adding between 15 and 18 million subscribers by 2008. That's the change that happened. And there were 22 telecom circles on only one regulator. So that's the broader point. I just wanted to put that context. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you indeed. Thank you so much.
Let's have a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I was just going to ask all of our big guns to come together for a group photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, an energy filled or energy packed session, literally and figuratively. Thank you so much. And of course, Ashutosh, I'm going to call you back in just a few seconds from now. So, time for us to think long term as far as it comes to India's energy transition game. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and, of course, to Ashutosh, who's going to be joining us back in just a few seconds. So, we're all set, ladies and gentlemen. With this, we move on to our next panel, which is titled Weaving the Future Building an Integrated Textile Value Chain in MP. Now, when we think about textiles and the textile industry, we often think about it as one single industry. However, the strength of textiles really depends on how well every part of the value chain connects and comes together. And this could be raw materials and manufacturing to skills as well as access to markets. So, for Madhya Pradesh, ladies and gentlemen, the opportunity is to bring more of that value chain together within the state, creating stronger links between investment, industry, and employment. Without further ado, I'd like to invite, of course, our moderator back to the stage, senior editor at Times Experiences, Ashutosh Sinha. And joining us, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome with a big round of applause, Secretary Industries, Government of Madhya Pradesh, John Kingsley, IAS. A warm welcome to you, sir. Founder and owner of Orient Craft, Sudhir Dhingra, and partner, government sector leader at PwC India, Ranin Banerjee. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sirs, for joining us.
Thank you so much. So patiently waiting for this conversation to happen. So we're trying to speak about textile. And, Mr. Dhingra, you're one of the pioneers around and scale as well. I'd like you to start the conversation. How do we put the entire sector to growth? And then I'll come to specifics. What does India need to do to get bigger and match some of the smaller countries which are probably eating our cheese?
Sir, I'll start with the fact that for the last more than 50 years that I've been in this business, we've never had any attention paid to the garment industry, particularly maybe textile to some extent. So it was not a focus industry. At no point of time any government sort of paid much heed to it. There were no budgets allocated to developing this industry. It's, I think, of very, very recently when we had the Jantar Mantar stir, which has woken us all up that no matter what we do, we need to think in terms of country as a whole. What does it comprise of? And what are the skill sets that our general population has? Right now, what we're looking at, this generation we call Gen Z or Alpha A, they are only right now raking up, some malpractices in the selection or provision of jobs, etc. But the fact is, for every 1,000 government jobs, there are 200, 300,000 applications. So even if this was to be set right, and those 1,000 jobs are giving, we need to start thinking as what will happen to the balance 2 lakh people or 2.5 lakh people. Where do they go? Not everybody is a top grader. Not everybody has had the ability, an opportunity to go to through a good education system. But that's Indian population, like it has been everywhere. It's not new to India. I mean, Bangladesh was this. Even I would say UK was like this 50 years ago. When made in the UK was a very proud thing. They made it. They turned to labor-intensive sectors. If China was China realized this, I think, 60 years ago. They realized that such a large population cannot be just catered for by simply high-end whatever. So they attracted a lot of talent, a lot of investment, and they gave. That's why if you see most of the Chinese large government houses are set very close to Hong Kong, and they were given every facility from a factory to a labor to training to years of bleeding that they went through, which the government supported them by doing joint ventures with them. And that's a part of the established history that they could keep their people busy, which was very critical. And with that, they went into other industries as well. But the first set of jobs they secured, and we will probably look at Russia, compare similar economies, but Russia failed at that time because they were still working on the communist system. I think the realization today, which I think is coming to the government, and I'm very happy to see what Madhya Pradesh government has done. They've also written a wonderful policy. They are focusing on this, but more. I let's just go. Today, textile industry employs roughly about 4.5 crore people, of which 3 crores is garmenting and 1.5 is yarn, fabric, home furnishings, etc., etc. And it is really a shame, I think, that a country as able, as large, whose needs, acute needs are to create, you know, basic jobs to start with, not to aim for the big ones, which only the brightest of the students will get, and the balance, what do the balance do? So this realization is going to help.
Okay, so let me ask Mr. Kingsley, uh, why is textile so central to industrial activity in Madhya Pradesh? What will a textile company get there, or how will he part of the how will that company be a part of the value chain?
See, as far as Madhya Pradesh is concerned, in olden days onwards, for example,
If you can keep the mic close.
Indore and Ujjain were textile centers, and then it lost out. Then later part, we had so much of investments in textiles, where nearly 40% of total exports from Madhya Pradesh from textile, and another 40% is fiber and yarn. Big players like Trident, Vardhaman, Nagar, then Sagar, then local players, Syndex, so many are there. Whereas we had garment clusters in few cities, which could not cater. Actually, we were not utilizing, only 4% of total garment exports were from Madhya Pradesh. So government brought in a policy to bring in anchor garment players to have, as long as, for example, to who can employ 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people, mostly women in those sectors, to kickstart the ecosystem of having garment-led exports, and also so that our local players also learn the tricks and move forward in the value chain which they provide for local market. So even Jabalpur is for kids wear. So these small players also, we wanted them to learn and move forward. For that, we provided much incentives. For example, since it's labor intensive, so we provided them with a lot of multiples of, from our industrial policy, if they provide employment in their own payrolls, because we want all of them to be in organized sector, so that they are given in PF, and training allowance, and even we know to establish this industry and bring in that culture of working for 8 hours in a shift in line, since these garment large industries work online. Even our labor laws were modified. We are having earlier tailor was the only category available. Then we categorized them into stitchers, sewers, and like that, so that it's easy for them over period to establish and have compliance and provide them long-term value. We provide assistance for not only capital, and for employing more labor we provide them assistance, and provide them training assistance, as well as for 1 or 2 years continuous employment we provide them assistance in their even salary as well.
Okay, point taken. Mr. Banerjee, how will that long term, what does the government, any government need to do to make sure that the long term viability of the industry as well as the policymakers have objectives, both can be met together?
So I think as far as thanks Astus for that question, and I think very valid points made by Mr. Dhingra and Mr. John. See, I think when the right thing that you said is how do we think long term, and we need to think long term. We need to go beyond just getting one anchor investor, and we need to think that how do we build the ecosystem so that we capture the downstream, because in MP we are more upstream. We need to capture the downstream, and for that we need to have the ecosystem come into the state, especially if we are talking about the new integrated manufacturing at the textile focused park, PM Mitra Park at Dhar. How do we get the ecosystem players there? And when I say ecosystem, we need to think broader. It is not just the ecosystem related to textiles, it is beyond. How do you get the skilling players? How do you get the design folks? How do you get tie-ups with technology companies who can service them? How can you get a platform created which kind of directs demand to this location? So the policies and convergence that to happen is across many departments. And I think Mr. John said that already labor and other departments are coming in. So in the state, we need to think that how the various departments who are the linkages to this ecosystem, and when we think the ecosystem broader, comes together and the policies harmonize, and we have a long-term play in this. And that's the only way to get more industries, more value capture in the downstream that can happen in this state.
Mr. Dhingra, we were speaking a little while ago, and you mentioned about the 15 billion exports. Of India's 36 billion exports in textile, the core part is stuck as 15 for
10 years.
10 years.
10 years, yeah.
How does that change? What is that push that is needed for that?
So I think it's a variety of things. Variety of things. The first and foremost is the government's focus and some of the government's resources, where everybody, you see it, the way we are, if you talk to any state, they talk of investment. Okay, if you are doing 1,000 crore investment, God, you're like a god. But the second most important question that we need to ask, which is so relevant to India today, is how many jobs and what kind of jobs. If you set up most of the industries that are, become very prominent, are also very technology led. They're very automation led. They're very AI led. So 1,000 crore investment could only have 100 jobs. And those 100 jobs could be for who? For people who are like electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, this, that, and the other, and that to top of the. So that general perception of the government need to understand that the larger investment does not necessarily mean jobs and does not necessarily mean jobs that are right for your population. You know, we might be, uh, let's say, today going into electronics and doing a wonderful job. Not to say that it's not important, very important. But we are forgetting that vast amount of our population, and let me look at 50% of our population is women. They've uh, they live in small towns or villages mostly, and most of such industries are into bigger industrial areas, etc. They can't be moved from town to town to village. It's not possible. But textile, particularly garmenting, can be placed anywhere, wherever there's decent road and electricity available. It doesn't require a very large piece of land. Textile mills do, but garmenting doesn't. It doesn't need too much electricity. It uh, it can train people entry level in less than 90 days.
So it's a very interesting point that you
So
mentioned.
no, so but the fact is, if I ask, there are no budgets with most governments. We are the most neglected sector, which can at this point of time be a lifesaver.
36 billion industry which you're calling neglected sector.
So देखिए 10 साल से if we are stuck at 10, 15 billion,
Yeah,
so obviously something is wrong. When
definitely.
the rest of the world, the total business, I think in India is roughly 1,540 billion last year, and out of which you have 36.
Yeah.
अब 36 में 4 4.5 crore लोग आपके काम कर रहे हैं. Can you imagine if this was 100?
Yeah.
If this was 100, you will be looking at maybe 12 crores. Every billion would probably generate 12 lakh jobs. And jobs are who? People who've been deprived of good education, women who have been married at very young age and they end up, producing a couple of children, getting used and abused by the mother-in-laws or the husbands and this, that, and that. Today's women, the next generation is not going to take it.
So
And they
let me
should not have
ask
to
Mr.
take it.
Banerjee then. I'll come to you, sir, in just a bit. The technology angle, could that be the multiplier that the industry is looking, the textile industry is looking, along with policy inputs? Could that be the way?
So I think that's an important thing you're saying. See, the scale of the problem that Mr. Dhingra is saying and the urgency that we need, we don't have a luxury of doing or. It is to be and everything has to be on the table. Now, technology is very, very important even for this sector. Why? If you look at the new trend in export market, two things. One is that Europe is moving its legislation and they are making this digital products passport, right? Now, many of our companies won't have it or won't have the ability to achieve it as quickly as possible as they need. So therefore, there's a digital angle to that. So, and we need to be prepared for it from a traceability perspective, from a sustainability perspective, that how do you demonstrate? Second is, our industries, if we are setting up in clusters, we can have digital twins, which can be remotely monitored. Why do I need to give certificate? You look at it live, what is happening on site. That gives you confidence. So we can create digital twins through which remotely your sources can look at it, that what is happening there. The other technology element could be that we create a platform and maybe leverage government's DPI, ONDC, etc., where all the ecosystem players in the chain come in, and when an order comes in, it matches to the suppliers in the ecosystem, to the zip maker, to the button maker, to the hem stitcher, etc. So that is the third. And fourth is, the trend is that we will have smaller batches of production. It will break down as the market evolves. You will have smaller batches of production. And in Turkey, they actually have aligned themselves to supply to the smaller batches of production, again through technology adoption. That how do you source it, break it, and give it to different players and respond to it fast. So I think technology adoption has to be a very important aspect, and I think government has a very big role to play there to support the industry on that front.
Mr. Kingsley, how would you say that? Is MP ready for that?
See, MP's readiness can be understood by the day of foundation stone laying day of PM Mitra Park. 2,000 acres of land sold out. Sold out means name the player, big player in textile and garment, they are there. See, we intend to create more than 1 lakh job in that park itself. The committed investment is more than 25,000 crores. But we don't want to limit that to that area. So we have identified different areas as my colleague said. See, we plan to take to the next level of every clusters developed in different parts of the state, because as he's rightly pointed out, see, text garmenting requires very small area and you employ huge. For example, the only one industry with less than 100 crores investment can employ more than 4,000 to 5,000 people in one shift. So that has happened, that in because you need that much number of people in a place where transport should not be, that means the travel should not be long, and many players coming in doesn't want to have dedicated hostel or that facilities. So we have identified different places, different towns where these can be established, and we are pushing big players to come in so that local players also benefited and MSMEs also grow along with that. So garmenting in different parts of the state, nearly every district will have small clusters, and textile for raw material, and that raw material for garments will be available from these parks, and larger textile already hub which Madhya Pradesh is, which sends to because more than 20%, 30% of uh, yarn and this goes to Bangladesh and other places. So that can be utilized in the state itself. So state's policy itself is pushing for it. And we most probably will see over the years it's creating lakhs and lakhs of employment in the state.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm just reminded of the women here will probably relate to it better than what I do. The Maheshwari saris from Madhya Pradesh. So, you know, maybe we could have some more varieties coming in from the state of Madhya Pradesh. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Brilliant session. And we love the closing. I think you got every woman in the house, big smile, ears perking up. Maheshwari saris, absolute beauties, works of art. Yes, Chanderi as well. You're absolutely right. And we're keeping you busy, Ashutosh, because you're going to go down and come back up again. So, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, every gap in a value chain is also value that moves elsewhere. So, the opportunity and the strength, I think, for Madhya Pradesh would be to connect those links and retain more of that value within the state itself. So, thank you so much to Mr. Kingsley, Mr. Dhingra, Mr. Banerjee, and Ashutosh is going to quickly get off and get back on. We're making you earn your meals today, getting in all the steps for Ashutosh. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we shall head to our final and definitely as riveting as all the sessions have been. Also, big thank you to all our partners who I shall personally list out and thank just after this. But can we have a round of applause for all the partners who have collaborated and helped us put this wonderful, wonderful event together? The Economic Times World Leaders Forum 2026. So let me tell you a bit about what's coming up. Our session is titled Emergence of International Financial Services Centers and Their Role in Achieving the Viksit Bharat 2047 goal. I think the perfect choice of session to cap off the day, which has been peppered with riveting sessions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, international financial services centers sit at the meeting point of domestic ambition and global capital. What we've seen and what we like to say is that their role extends beyond providing a location for financial transactions, but the larger question really revolves around how they can deepen India's reach into global markets and support the country's ambitions for 2047. Joining us to put the spotlight on the emergence of these international financial services centers and their role in achieving the Viksit Bharat 2047 goal are Executive Director of IFSCA, Dr. Dipesh Shah. Welcome, sir. Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Edelweiss Mutual Fund, Radhika Gupta. Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Emirates International Insurance Brokers, LLC, Pradeep Sonawane, and Chief Legal Officer of Spec Finance, Saurabh Sharma. And a very hearty and warm welcome back to our Senior Editor at Times Experiences, Ashutosh Sinha. Let's have a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Our final session for the day. Looking forward to a riveting discussion.
Thank you so much. Moving from textiles and Chanderi and Maheshwari to financial services, my God, not easy. But I can tell you one thing, Radhika is very excited hearing about that.
I'm very excited hearing about textiles. It's something I love as much as financial services. So I should have been on the last panel.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. So let's move on and get, sir, first to you. The regulator's picture, less than a decade into Gift City, how is everything looking? How well are we moving ahead so that we can become one of the places to be for financial services, a whole variety of financial services to be offered?
Yeah. So let me just quickly, as it's as you said, less than a decade, but the concept of Gift City is since 2007-8, when this was conceived as an India's first smart city and India's first international financial services center. Now, the unique positioning that the Gift City got is that time both there were no smart cities in India and there is no international financial services center at that time in India. And that means you have to create everything from ground zero. And as you can imagine, to create something on ground zero and to write rules, regulations, and make it functional is a very challenging task. But the most important part was that in India was already growing in a big scale and size. And to undertake international financial services, our firms were dependent on smaller centers like Singapore, Dubai, and Mauritius in particular. Not to talk about London and US, where people have been using, investing into India through those areas. But GIFT came at a time to give probably an hope that India can create its own international financial services center. And as you can imagine, starting anything new in India, I think there are more questions than answers. Everybody threw on us the questions that financial center in India, it's a new regulation. Gujarat, which is not known for financial services. They said that everything is against you. You can't do this.
And there was a more important thing. Liquor is not available. A lot of people wanted to know that.
Yeah, I think that also was one of the talking point that, look, you are creating a center where probably these things are not available so easily. So with those, things in mind, I think we should give credit to the vision that the Honorable Prime Minister, who was a Chief Minister at that time, he really laid down a very clear, one simple problem statement. Can you create something better than Singapore into Gift City? Now, obviously, if you really unfold this statement, what does it mean? It means that you create an infrastructure which is parallel to what you see outside. You create regulation what you see outside. and you also provide a tax competitive regime to operate from. And all this piece put together is what you now see in the GIFT City up and running. So if I fast forward this to 2026 now, what GIFT City has achieved, as you ask me, what GIFT City has done now is it has almost 28,000 people operating there. There are 1,500 firms which are operating in that zone. We have licensed 1,300 of them. And there is a sizable number of banking asset size, capital market, the fund industry, the stock exchanges, insurance, reinsurance. And we have almost 35 business segments operating from GIFT City now. So it has now evolved into probably a landscape which can be used by the Indian institutions. Instead of going outside, they can start using this as their landing point for both inbound and outbound investments. And that's what we are seeing GIFT City is now emerging into, providing an easy access to capital to invest into India, and also easy access for people to access outside India markets from GIFT City. With this, I think where to your point on, how do we see it going forward now? I think going forward, it has to be players like you have on this panel. Like I think players like Edelweiss and others will now probably make the future statements in GIFT as to how they see this as its own. They've been operating from several parts of the world and they are now operating from GIFT. And they probably need to provide the future directions to other institutions as to what has been their experience of operating in this. Is it comparable to what you are doing in Dubai, Mauritius, and Singapore, or still we have a paths to travel?
So Pradeep, from on the ground, what is the perception? You sit outside India, in Dubai, which is one of the competing centers, so to say. How is it seen? A young little startup, that's the flavor of India, and which wants to be and challenge some of the big daddies.
See, they got a strategic geographical advantage, for the Middle East, everything. And like Dipesh ji has said, one of our things takes time, we had our own challenges where in the setup like Dubai or something, you want to build up something, vision is created, implemented in 2 years. They got the infrastructure done, and they got the expertise brought into the place. Capital has coming in, and that's a success story. What I would say that, we don't have to compete against the DIFC or the Singapore or those kind of markets. Because why? Fundamentally, Dubai, if you ask me, or everybody knows, do they have the business? I mean, the scale, the industries, the complexities. Dubai has, it's a trading only. Singapore, it's a trading. So whose business they are trading? It's India's business. They are trading into the international market. What we have that is our biggest strength. The growing economy, the scale, complexities. And that's where our approach should be. Yes, it's a GIFT platform. It's fantastic. It's a bridge between the local insurance companies, brokers, reinsurers to the international market. What we need to see that we have to bring in those business back to GIFT City. So the real success, in my opinion, and which has a greatest opportunity, is that the business has to be transacted in the GIFT City. Okay. Once the transaction starts happening, we have the talent. We have huge talent. But that talent, we need to turn into the expertise. Expertise will bring into the transactions. Transactions brings the business volumes. And business volumes are increased, the capital will flow in, everybody will start coming in, And I think that's pretty easily achievable.
So Radhika, in terms of, if you can give a sense of the people here on the kind of maybe marquee deals that for that young startup we are talking of, how does that show up for the deal makers who are not just in India, but they are seeing some of these transactions outbound or inbound that are happening or that are being executed through GIFT City?
So firstly, I'm super happy to be here, and I'm very happy that at an ET World Leaders Summit where we're talking about Viksit Bharat. The idea of gift in an international financial center is here. Um, and maybe before I come to answering that, Ashutosh, I moved back to India in 2009 from a major financial center, which is New York. And if you look at the lay of the land then, to trade a simple global version of the Nifty, we had something called the SGX Nifty. So we had to go to Singapore for
I
that.
remember, yeah.
When a fund or an asset manager like me needed to set up a vehicle for global investors to access capital, it was either through Singapore or Dubai or Mauritius or the Cayman Islands. And cut to 15 years later, and these are all real stories. We wake up every morning not tracking the SGX Nifty, but the gift Nifty. And given how volatile the world is, but the gift Nifty is in our head. Uh, you know, gift is a vibrant ecosystem. And yesterday, since you were talking about deal making, I was at the annual sort of the AGM of the Association of Asset Managers, AMFI. Uh, and nearly everybody I spoke to, and we have been early in our presence in GIFT, but Dipesh, nearly everybody I spoke to was talking about what are you doing in GIFT? When are we going to start in GIFT? Everybody today who's an Indian asset manager is seriously thinking about a presence in GIFT. So for me, as an Indian in financial services, I think 15 years later, we've made a lot of progress in the right direction. And honestly, before I come to inbound and outbound, I truly think my own aspirations as an Indian for gift are far beyond what asset management can do, but that's perhaps a conversation for later. I absolutely agree with Pradeep ji that if you look at gift, we don't need to be in some kind of competitive race with Dubai and Singapore. Both those have their advantages of geography, but finally, with all due respect, Singapore is a very small country. It's the size of an Indian state. Gift has to play its own game. And in my view, the strongest part of the gift game is that gift sits in India, which is one of the world's fastest growing retail financial services destinations. It's one of the world's fastest growing economies. So global capital will come into India and Indian capital will go out of India and it will happen at scale. I think gives opportunity is to make that efficient and be the default choice. Now, two use cases, since you asked, I think and we are players, there are asset managers who are looking at gift with a single dimension. We really look at the business as multidimensional. We think the opportunity of inbound, which is attracting global capital into India, is large. As we talk to more and more non-residents, they prefer to invest via gift rather than making a transaction in India. Gift has made it a lot more seamless. And I think we are just at the tip of the iceberg with that business. Eventually, what I believe is, our sister concern, Edelweiss Alternative Asset Advisors, is also one of the largest private market players in gifts. They cater to marquee global institutions. They are getting comfortable with gifts. So that is happening on our end. So I think inbound continues to be a huge opportunity. Finally, if you look at Indian diaspora itself, we have a 4 crore diaspora, and that can look at gift. The second opportunity I truly believe is large is the outbound opportunity. I think as Indian capital markets evolve and the Indian investor evolves, the need to invest abroad is going to be a reality. It is going to be a structural part of every Indian's portfolio. Given that you can't do it through local markets, gift is going to become the destination of choice for an Indian wanting to invest abroad. To give you perspective, Dipesh was asking me how many funds I had. In the last year, I think we launched one fund. By the end of the year, we'll have 7 in the making. So it's one of our most aggressive plans this year.
Okay, so how is that sort of showing up on the ground? How is that change showing up?
Yeah, so look, despite not being from Gujarat, I've spent close to 2 decades over there. Okay,
So
and
you are NRG then.
yeah, I'm an NRG, so to speak. And I chose to be there because the kind of culture, the kind of people you have over there, it's unmatched. Despite
not been like I can understand Gujarati, but I can't speak. But I have at no point of time I felt that I'm an outsider, so to speak. The same thing applies to gift as well. Okay, it is able to attract talent across India. Okay, and soon across the world is our hope. Even spec we believed in the gift story. We believed that this is going to bring the next change, and that's why, despite having global operations, we operate out of gift. We decided to make our home base in gift city because this is where the next change is going to happen. Okay, last week we had our 80th Independence Day, and if you look at our history, things have shaped up with the industries which are coming in. Okay, we took 20, 30 years to get on our feet, but once the globalization happened, once IT came into being, that's where the entire Bangalore, the Hyderabad, all the IT booms happened. Okay, that's what brought the change on the services side. Similarly, if you look ahead of from where we are right now, uh, we believe that gift is going to be the next change, which is going to bring the capital because we have the talent, we have the resources, we have the will to make that change. That's what Honorable PM also mentioned yesterday. And GIFT is going to be the launch pad which will bring all of this together. Okay, it's going to bring that global capital into India, which was earlier getting routed through Mauritius, as the page also mentioned, or somewhere else. But being able to attract that over here is going to make a difference. So being on ground, uh, when we moved to Gift 3 years back, there were just two buildings over there which were operational. Right now, there are going to be 20. Okay. Dipesh mentioned that there are going to be around 28,000 people working out of there, and we are hoping the number will increase manifold. Even in our company, I think, most of the population is from outside Gujarat, and they chose to be there.
Okay, so since this issue was also raised, how is it going to be different? How is GIFT going to be different as you look at probably another 5 years or a little more, different compared to Dubai? I'm not mentioning maybe Dubai and Singapore, not mentioning the some of the smaller, the Mauritius or some other centers.
I think Pradeep ji did mention about this that when you talk of Dubai, Singapore, and Mauritius, they don't have a large hinterland economy to serve. And if you really see from that perspective, GIFT is right in the center, which is close and probably part of the large Indian economy. And I think that dynamic will be the key enabler for people to look at GIFT City both ways, inbound and outbound. And that is going to be beneficial in two forms because one, you are closer to the India time zone when you are in GIFT, and second, the cost of operation is very, very competitive. And the competitive tax regime that the government has given to GIFT City, which is out of 25 years, 20 years you don't pay any tax on the profits that you earn in GIFT City. So as a fund manager, you don't pay any tax on 20 years on the profits that you are making in GIFT City. Now, this is what the regimes have been prevalent in many parts of the world, and it was not thought that India can also bring something like this on paper. And this is now operating for 10 years, and it has been given the regime for 20 years now. So this probably will lay the foundation for, as you asked, for much larger deals to happen. For example, in banking asset size, we have touched $140 billion of banking asset size now sitting in GIFT. And if you really see from an India ECB, external commercial borrowing, 70% of India's ECB is now being booked in GIFT City versus outside India, which was zero before GIFT came in. And then if you translate this into say funds, which are now 400 funds there, 250 plus fund managers there, and they have got commitments of $40 billion, which is almost 4 lakh crore. And they have invested 1 lakh 80,000 crore out of that money into India and outside from GIFT already. So the point is that if India at 2047 is emerging as a big story, then the key enabler or the key piece for adding value of bringing in capital would probably the gift as a launch pad, as was said, as a touch point to do India business more efficiently with a competitive regime.
So Pradeep, since you represent the insurance sector, typically the long-term capital, how does that spreading its tentacles or spreading really within Gift City and sending the message to the world at large? How does that change the long-term story for Gift City?
See, long-term long-term story depends on, I will just add something. So if the foundation is there, what we really need to create, I mean, commercial reasons to create, okay, to transact the business in the gift city. What is required for the international players to bring in capital or something? The confidence, okay, expertise. Why traditionally our business is still going outside? Because we don't have that technical expertise. Okay, that technical expertise we need to bring in. We have the talent. Okay, so we need to, apart from that, we need to create a startups ecosystem. I was doing some business in Johannesburg, and I'm talking about treaty reinsurance as something, sitting with the Minicry CEO, Africa's this thing. He gave me the book, it was about 15 years back, the research on the climate change. Okay. So look, I mean, what reinsurers are doing, So we need to boost, because all those complexities, large risks are originating from here, But that research, development, bringing those products, okay, that is what it will change and put the gift city on a completely different trajectory, Okay.
Radhika, your words about that 7 funds kind of caught my attention. For everyone, again, sitting here, people who invest in the markets and are looking at global markets, that's a great opportunity to go. And the way, not the greatest of things to say, but the rupee is depreciating against the dollar. That is one story you might want to, as individual investors or as HNIs, you might want to de-risk yourself from that depreciation that's happening. Tell everyone the story of what opportunity it presents for them as well.
Yeah, and in the last year, I think, and this is always a bit cyclical, the number of people who have written to me about investing abroad is, especially with markets like Korea and Taiwan doing what they have, is absolutely crazy. But look, I have been talking about the opportunity for Indians to invest abroad since back in 2015 and 16, because I started my career in global markets. And for the many years that I lived in the US, maybe 50% of my portfolio went to my home market, which was the US, and the balance 50% went abroad because diversification across markets was just the natural course of business. And there are multiple reasons for, and it's not the first thing the first time Indian investor is going to do. I never tell a first time Indian investor, go and invest in South Korea, because you have to understand your home market first. But finally, 95% of the world's GDP sits outside the country. Many interesting listed themes today are present in a China or are present in a US or are present in a Korea, but are not present in India because of the structure of our economy. There's nothing wrong with it. And of course, there is the element of currency depreciation. So I think for most Indians, having a 10 to 15% allocation to some parts of the world, and I always say the basics are some US markets, some China, some emerging markets. I mean, these are the dal chawal or the noodle of global investing. I think that's going to be necessary, and that opportunity will be available through GIFT. As I said, we already have one fund that focuses on China. We'll have two focused on the US, one more focused on emerging markets soon, and I'm sure others are also doing it. The other thing, Ashutosh, is as the average Indian's income rises, their touch points globally will increase beyond investing. You will want to maybe keep assets abroad when you travel. Many people want to send their children for an undergraduate or a graduate education abroad. So your need to have a convenient way to transact abroad beyond what I do is also real. And that's why I think GIFT plays a role in that whole ecosystem. So there's saving abroad, there's investing abroad, there's transacting abroad. All of this is going to be necessary as the average Indian involves. We are becoming, and to your point made in the previous question, even if you look at our startups, they have global, ambitions. They want to list abroad. They might want to have ESOPs in foreign countries. So all this will fit together.
Okay, Saurabh, then that also some of the opportunities, while we spoke about the, and just now Radhika spoke about some of the opportunities overseas, inbound, if you can explain how does that play out? How do you see that playing out? Global funds putting in money, capital markets respond to capital coming in.
So yeah, see, so far we have seen, if you look at 10 years back, you have seen money going outbound only. Okay, it's not been seen that we are getting funds in, and even if you have to get in, you have to go through the entire FDI route. You have to go through the entire regime, which is there. What GIFT has done very beautifully, and I would credit the regulator for that, that having a unified regulator makes it very easy to get things done. Okay, you have a single window clearance, you have things being done much faster. So that responds to what the need of the market is as well. Okay, and once the funds start coming in, once the capital is coming in, it's going to create a difference across the board. It's not going to be get limited only to Gift City. That's why you have a lot of funds who are using it as a hub and spoke model. So you have a hub sitting in Gift, which will invest further down in the mainland. So that's what is going to, and the market has been responding. Okay, it's not been a story, or it's not been a case where it was started and there was no traction happening, nothing like that. So we have been able to see a lot of changes coming in. Okay, we have been able to see the universities coming in and setting up their campuses in Gift. Okay, foreign universities are coming in, the insurances companies are coming in, funds are coming in, and whenever we had a meeting with the regulator or the Gift City, the development authority, one thing has been constant, that they have been looking more and more options, how what else you can bring in. Okay, and that collective effort is something which is appreciable, and which is something is going to bring the change. So even if you meet the chairperson at IFSCA, if you meet someone at Gift City, even no matter who that person is, they are all working for that single goal. And that's what is going to make the change, and that's what, when the capital comes in, when we have, even in our case, we are getting the capital into Gift. Okay, we are trying to use this as a hub and spoke model for our own investors as well. So that's how we see things to unfold.
Also, the expansion of the ecosystem, financial services ecosystem, that's so important, so that the influence, we live in the influence economy today. Everyone wants to influence the ecosystem. What is the regulator doing to expand that ecosystem?
I think if you see the business verticals in the IFFC zone, we have gone much more beyond a traditional financial center. So it's not banking, insurance, and capital market. As I said, we have 35 business segments which operate there. So even if you have a finance company to create a structure to give like an NBFC loan into India and outside, you have a treasury centers which are up and running there, where people manage dollar from outside. They pull the capital into Gift and allocate into India and outside. Then we have structures for aircraft ship leasing operating there, and then we have even universities operating there. So it's now a complete ecosystem which is itself running on its own. And then you have consultancy firm, law firms, they are also part of the ecosystem there and licensed in the same way as the other financial services players are. So we are now able to see the benefit of the whole ecosystem inside. If you come in Gift, we have seen the transaction for aircraft, for example. The aircraft was bought by a Gift City entity. The legal advisor was sitting in Gift. The financing was done from a bank in Gift. The trustee was sitting in Gift. Everything A to Z was done from Gift. Whereas earlier, we were all getting this from Dublin or Singapore. The whole services were exported outside and jobs were created outside. So we could see that benefit of coming together of the entire piece. One more thing I would like to highlight with this forum is that, look, Gift can only become successful when we all start putting our trust into our own financial center. We have seen, and that's why I always have a special regards to the consultants, because they always have a booklet of doing business in Dubai, doing business in Mauritius, doing business in Singapore. And I always tease them, it's a high time that you should have a doing business in gift as a booklet, because now more and more people want to understand, and it is our collective efforts, as was mentioned here, that we have to analyze that if gift is able to serve what you always wanted to do from India, then there's no need of creating structures outside. If there are some gaps, we as a regulator would be more than happy to understand those gaps and try and address them so that you don't have to move outside India to do India business.
I will just add something, See, that is what it is. See, the aircraft leasing, you're talking about the trade race, the cyber. These are when this ecosystem prevails, this is where we need to get that aviation sector expertise, that kind of insurance, that kind of risk management. Once that comes into the gift city, so you have this, but you are creating a capacity. Once the capacity is created, capital is flown in, and that capital remains. Now what is happening? There is a more than inflow, the outflow is there. And once this chain is fixed, everything changes. What we need to see looking forward is that uh, how international business comes into the gift city. International reinsurance business should be transacted into the city, and for that, this, whether it is expertise, whether it is complexities, new product, digitization, setting up the digital reinsurers and all that, those things we need to start looking at it. I mean, I just add as a regulator, some suggestion.
Sure. I thought you wanted to say something.
I did, and I wanted to sort of think of a perhaps, we are coming to the end of this, I'm sure, but think about a provocative question. You know, maybe 20 years ago, I was a young Indian who went to pursue her financial services career abroad. Every year, there are thousands and thousands of really talented Indians who graduate from IITs and IIMs, and they go abroad to pursue global financial services careers in Dubai and in Singapore and New York. Uh, and a significant amount of Wall Street in Dubai and Singapore is run by people like us. So we clearly have the talent for financial services. To me, a prosperous gift, as I think about this 10, 15 years later, is why not India? Why not gift? Why won't talented Indians who want to pursue a global financial services career choose to do it in gift? Why doesn't someone finish their IIT, go to gift where great universities are set up? I had a conversation with the Wharton guys about this. They do a degree there, and then gift becomes a buzzing hub of good quality financial services jobs. As a country, I think one place we've had tremendous success is the GCC model, the whole global capability thing. Why not financial services? Why not, and not beyond back office? Why not portfolio management? Why not risk? Gift is capable of doing that. So for me, I think this goes beyond inbound and outbound. And 15, 20 years later, you shouldn't need to immigrate to go have a fantastic financial services career.
Quick one is same thing. I mean, you are the mutual fund expert. We need to have the bottom up approach, from the bottom, because the insurance is so interconnected. I'm telling you, what's happening at the domestic insurance, ultimately what happens, you are providing the reinsurance capacity, capital to the local insurance companies. Now, if you don't do the right risk management, and I have seen, okay, and I still continue to be in touch, that typical Indian jugaad, is there on the risk man. Tomorrow, reinsurers are going to pull out, okay, so quickly. I have seen in happening in internationally when they start bleeding. So until and unless you fix up from the bottom, whether the risk management is there, the data, which is a critical thing, and that's where I think the technology AI can support, to have the catastrophe accumulations, these things, calculations, actuary, and we can have the more precise. Even the reinsurance placement can be supported by the AI, and which will change the entire spectrum. I mean, I feel that Gift City should be the reinsurance retake,
Reinsurance
yeah,
capital of the world?
capital of the
Oh
world. Yeah.
my God, wonderful.
He should come back to India then.
Yeah. So he's already working.
By the way, we
yeah,
are
yeah,
opening
we
up in
spoke
Gift
about
City.
it. One last word, and I thought your words was very important. You used the word trust, and I think it boils down to that one word. And you also referred to it that Indians should have the confidence that they can do it via gift.
And the confidence comes from a combination of times. Your trust and brands are not built overnight. And I think ISKA has done a fantastic job. Consistency of policy, consistency of taxation. More people coming in attracts more people. But at the heart and soul of this, in an AI driven world, the only thing left is trust anyway.
Thank you so much. Sorry,
No,
you
just wanted to add one question which we are typically asked, whenever we are at a conference in GIFT or somewhere, that why only in Gujarat, okay, and why IFSCA and IFSC is only present in Gujarat. The answer to that is that the land, the entrepreneurship, the spirit which is there in Gujarat is unmatched. Okay, you don't have any other location which has so much resources, so many, the people who have the will to do something, and GIFT has a a big task at hand when we say towards Viksit Bharat in 2047. Once this gets the once the baby steps are done, and we are able to create the gift city what we are aiming to do, it's going to be very easy to replicate the model across the country. And that's where I think the real change will happen. We have seen in the history as well that how Bombay, Kolkata, Chennai, Delhi, these were the major headquarters or the centers. The time has now come where you need places like Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, Vizag, Jaipur, so to speak, the tier two cities, what they're called, to make them the next metros. And this is where it's going to make the difference.
I'll just clarify one simple point in this. I think it's good that you raised this point. Uh, See, the Indian currency is not fully convertible. And that's why currently the government has given a carve out at one location. That's what the examples outside has been. Whether you take China, even Love One for Malaysia for that example. Now, the problem statement would be that you are competing with the centers outside Singapore, Dubai, Mauritius, whatever you say. The moment you say that there will be 10 gift city across India, then it will be a state to state competition, which is what you want to avoid. And that's where right now what you are seeing is you are one place where the government policy allows you to experiment, if you really see from that perspective, and match it to the level the global centers operate. And till the time we achieve the full convertibility, I think that's what the stated position of the government is, to keep making this more stronger in compared to other competing.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this conversation. One line that I just say, since you referred to not necessarily gift being in all parts of the country or different parts of the country, this democratization of economic opportunity beyond the four metros as we've known it, that is the big opportunity. So we all need to go to a Jaipur, to a Hyderabad, to Chennai, even Bhubaneswar. Why not? To create that economic opportunities and the jobs, as it were.
And Ashutosh, on a lighter note, GIFT promises to have a bullet train to Mumbai. So it might be shorter to go from Mumbai to GIFT than Parel to Andheri or Delhi to Gurgaon. So that's also a nice benefit that's going to come.
So that reality doesn't go away. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashutosh.
A big thank you to all our speakers. Let's have a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. This session has been a gift. And trust, as you said, a key takeaway. And we trust you had a good time. You've been having a good 2 days. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to a wrap on this stage. Of course, you can continue to enjoy the rest of the forum. This brings us to a close at the Economic Times World Leaders Forum 2026. I have to say a big round of applause for all of you. Through it all, you've been a fabulous audience. Really, really, though. Thank you so much. And again, a big thank you to every speaker, every panelist, the moderator who joined us on stage. We've had some wonderful conversations. We've looked at artificial intelligence from different lens, from predictive to intelligent systems, from cybersecurity to longevity, energy industry, and global finance. We've truly covered a lot of ground. So once again, thank you. But this day would not be complete if I didn't, again, shine a spotlight on all our partners who have made the Economic Times World Leaders Forum 2026 possible. So a big thank you to our presenting partner, Spec Finance, powered by Visa and co-powered by Suzlon and Casa Grande. Our category partners, Google and RRP Defense Limited. Our knowledge partner, PwC, and our state partners, the government of Madhya Pradesh, government of Bihar, the government of Maharashtra, the government of Chhattisgarh, and the government of Uttarakhand. And of course, our tourism partner, Delhi Tourism. A big shout out to also associate partners, IOB, Chennai Port Authority, GMDC, Skoda, Anand Technologies, Rasna Foundation, and Truecaller. It's also been heartening to see everyone network and connect and share conversations and insights through the 2 days. And that's been a big motive of ours with this forum. So once again, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the forum and have a safe trip back home. Hopefully it's faster than that metro ride we just talked about. Thank you so much.